Ah, innovation. Life is a gift compared to the olden days, where meat needed to be eaten raw, and the equivalent of social media drama were witch burnings. Need a conspicuous item? Bam! Delivered. Too lazy to cook food? Bam! Delivered. Need a loving and caring wife? As long as you have money for a plane ticket to Bulgaria and head to a town called Stara Zagora. If you pass the qualifications that these lovely ladies meet and agree on a bride price, then everything is possible. Okay, this was off topic, but anywho, here are modern inventions and their past versions. Number 1. The toaster. Ah, the toaster. That delightful little machine responsible for transforming bread into crunchy, golden perfection. But before it came along, people had to rely on its rudimentary predecessor, the toasting fork. Yeah, imagine this. Before the convenience of electricity, folks were essentially just jabbing slices of bread with what looked like an oversized fork and holding it over an open flame. It was primitive, sure, but effective, as long as you didn't mind the occasional burnt edges, or burnt fingers for that matter. It was less breakfast preparation and more live action fire hazard cooking. Now, the idea of an electric toaster started to sizzle, pun intended, during the late 19th century. One of the first attempts was the Eclipse, developed by Compton and Company in 1893. This was a basic contraption consisting of exposed heating wires that would quite literally toast the bread if you were patient enough to watch over it. Here's the catch. It wasn't exactly user-friendly. There was no automatic pop-up mechanism, so if you got distracted and forgot your toast, you'd end up with a slice of charcoal instead of, well, a toast. Still, the invention was groundbreaking because it removed the unpredictable nature of open flames from the equation. Well, kind of. Early electric toasters were temperamental and had an annoying tendency to short circuit, but these innovations paved the way for the automated pop-up toaster we know today. So in short, before you complain about your toaster burning your bread slightly, spare a thought for those brave souls wielding toasting forks over open fires or risking electrocution with the first electric toasters. Number 2. The microwave. A marvel of modern convenience, capable of turning cold leftovers into piping hot meals in mere seconds. But before we had the zapping wonder, people relied on a rather humbler predecessor, the traditional oven and stove. Yep, there wasn't a single gadget specifically designed for quick reheating. Back in the day, if you wanted to warm up last night's stew or revive a cold cup of tea, you had to fire up the stove, endure the painstaking wait for it to heat, and hope you didn't burn your meal or your patience in the process. Now, the first inklings of a dedicated quick heating device came not from culinary ambition, but from sheer scientific curiosity. Enter Perry Spencer, a self-taught engineer working with radar technology in the 1940s. The story goes that while fiddling with the magnetron, a device that emits microwaves used in radar systems, Spencer noticed that a candy bar in his pocket had melted. By noticing that the microwaves, get it, had the capabilities to melt something quicker and I dare say less resource consuming, he had an aha! Microwaves could cook food. This revelation led to the creation of the first microwave oven, the Radar Range in 1947, a machine the size of a refrigerator, weighing over 700 pounds and costing a small fortune. It was designed for commercial use, not for your average household. Restaurants and food businesses loved it for its speed, but your everyday person, not so much. After all, how many people had a spare corner for a machine that looked like it belonged in a nuclear lab? Eventually, by the 1960s, manufacturers figured how to shrink the technology down, and the microwave became smaller, cheaper, and far more accessible. This was a game changer. It transformed kitchens, saved countless of hours, and probably single-handedly created a frozen dinner industry. Number 3. The car. A pinnacle of engineering that gave humanity the freedom to zip around without depending on horses or sore feet. But before the roar of engines filled the air, there were its more humble predecessors, wagons, carriages, and carts, all drawn by the MVP of early transportation, the horse. If you wanted to get anywhere, you needed a trusty steed and a good supply of oats. It was efficient enough, until the horse needed a break. The leap to mechanized travel started in the late 18th century with a quirky little contraption called a steam carriage. These were essentially wagons powered by steam engines. huffing and puffing their way down the roads like an unhappy wife catching their husband's gambling. Inventors like Nicolas Joseph Cugnot, 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 a Frenchman tinkered with these machines in the 1760s. His steam-powered vehicle could move at a whopping 2.5 miles per hour. That's right, slower than a brisk walk and about as graceful as a drunk elephant. It wasn't exactly practical, but hey, it was a start. Then in the 19th century, things got a little sleeker. Carl Benz entered the scene in 1886 with his Benz patent motor wagon. Widely regarded as the first true automobile, this three-wheeled wonder ran on an internal combustion engine and could hit a blazing top speed of 10 miles per hour. Revolutionary? Absolutely. Convenient? Well, only if you enjoy cranking at the start and be as fast as a motivated pig. Oh, and let's not forget that early cars were luxury items, accessible only to the super rich. As technology advanced, so did the car's design and accessibility. By the early 20th century, Henry Ford and his Model T transformed the automobile from a plaything for the elite to a practical tool for everyday folks. Ford's assembly line production cut costs and time, making the car affordable enough for the average worker. Suddenly, horsepower was not in the barn, but under the hood. Number 4. The vacuum. The vacuum cleaner is an invention so essential that we barely notice its brilliance anymore. But before we had these sleek, humming marvels of modern cleanliness, there were its predecessors. And let me tell you, they were wild. Meet the carpet sweeper, the first attempt at mechanized floor cleaning. It was first shown in the 19th century, and while it was revolutionary for its time, it was essentially a glorified broom with wheels. Sure, it picked up some dirt, but it missed plenty. But if we're talking about the direct predecessor of the modern vacuum, we must introduce the granddaddy of suction technology. Granddaddy. The manual vacuum pump, aka the whirlwind. Invented in the 1860s, this contraption required serious elbow grease. You had to crank it by hand while maneuvering the nozzle, which made cleaning feel less like a chore and more like a full-body workout. And after all that effort, it barely sucked dust to move. Now, things took a turn for the dramatic in 1901, when Hubert Cecil Booth unveiled the Puffing Billy, the first powered vacuum cleaner. This beast of a machine was gas-powered, horse-drawn, and about the size of a small elephant. Booth's vacuum, if you noticed, didn't fit inside homes, so it stayed outside, and long hoses were snaked through windows to suck up dust. Neighborhood kids love it, but homeowners, not so much, especially when the engine's roaring sounded like a steam locomotive crashing through your living room. And let's not forget the dangers of early vacuum tech. The first electric vacuums which came along in the 1910s weren't exactly OSHA approved. With exposed wires and overheating motors, they posed the risk of short circuits, burns, and occasionally setting the carpet you were trying to clean on fire. So yes, while modern vacuums might annoy us with a loud hum or an unexpected dust bag explosion, at least they won't try to burn your house down. And last but not least, the refrigerator. A true hero of the kitchen, keeping our leftovers fresh, our milk unspoiled, and our ice cream perfectly scoopable. But before this cool invention came along, people had to get creative with their food storage. Their primary predecessor? Ice boxes. These were essentially insulated wooden cabinets with a compartment for a big old block of ice. Think of it as a fridge without the plug, and with a lot more work involved. Now, using an ice box wasn't as simple as tossing in your groceries and walking away. First, you had to source the ice, which was delivered by the neighborhood iceman in a wagon. Fun fact, if you didn't tip the iceman well, you'd end up with a smaller block of ice, and maybe a side-eye. Once the ice was in, you had to regularly drain the melted water, which often leaked out and turned your floor into a soggy hazard zone. Oh, and forget about keeping anything frozen for long. Ice boxes were more about delaying spoilage than truly preserving food. The dangers and downsides didn't stop there. If your ice came from a polluted source, which wasn't uncommon in the 19th and early 20th centuries, it could contaminate your food. Imagine opening your icebox, expecting fresh milk, and instead you get a bacteria party. And let's not overlook the obvious. The ice only lasted a few days, so constant re-upping was a necessity. It was more of a part-time job than an appliance. Enter the mechanical refrigerator in the early 1900s, which used compressors and refrigerants to keep things cool. But even these early models had their hiccups. The first refrigerators relied on chemicals like ammonia, methyl chloride, or sulfur dioxide. Great for cooling, terrible for your health. Leaks could cause everything from mild nausea to, well, death. Talk about a chilling side effect. Fortunately, by the mid 20th century, safer refrigerants were developed, and the refrigerator, as we know it, became a household staple. It eliminated the ice deliveries, the leaky floors, and the fear of accidental poisoning. It also paved the way for modern conveniences like frozen pizzas and popsicles. A true win for humanity. Now, with all these inventions in mind, which one was your favorite? Comment down below and see you on the next one. Stay stable. As someone who can't remove his mask since his face has melted due to radiation, and removing the mask is impossible since my skull has grown new facial tissues that literally connect to the mask, I do believe that I have the qualifications to discuss this topic. Anywho, what is radiation? Radiation is like that friend who shows up uninvited. Sometimes they're harmless, and other times they're the reason your hair falls out. In simple terms, radiation is energy traveling through space or materials in waves or particles. It's what powers your microwave burritos, lights up the sun, and makes certain bananas slightly more radioactive than others. Yes, bananas. Look it up. Radiation comes in two flavors, ionizing and non-ionizing. Non-ionizing radiation is the chill cousin, responsible for radio waves, visible light, and your Wi-Fi signal. It's generally harmless, unless you count the existential dread caused by slow internet speed bad, which in that case, a little bit of patience goes a long way. Ionizing radiation, on the other hand, is the edgy sibling. This bad boy has enough energy to knock electrons out of atoms, potentially causing cancer, damaging DNA, or making materials radioactive through activation. Fun fact, we're constantly exposed to background radiation from the Earth and cosmos. Sharing a bed? Congrats! You're both radiating affection. And gamma rays. Serves you right, you normies? Anywho, where was I? Oh yeah, now that we got what is radiation covered, it's time to learn how it affects your body. As I said earlier, there are two main types of radiation, ionizing and non-ionizing. Since non-ionizing radiation lets you use your phone and allows you to track your partner who is suspiciously in a parking lot for 2 hours, we will focus more on ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation is the distinct troublemaker between the two. It's the stuff that, if you were a DNA and had a daughter, you'd probably tell her to stay away from him, because he'll not only ruin her life and future prospects, but has a high chance of murdering her and everyone she loves. But don't just take my word for it. History has plenty of receipts on this bad boy. The first documented health incident? Cue the 1920s radium girls. These factory workers painted watch dials with radium, or radium, and for some reason were instructed to, I kid you not, lick their brushes for precision. Now my brain may be glowing and my face melting, but licking something that sounds, tastes, and looks to be not suitable to be ingested is not a good idea. Their bones began to rot from the inside out. Lawsuits followed, and it became crystal clear that ionizing radiation wasn't just dangerous. It was most dangerous. Get it? Most dangerous, because just dangerous. Okay, I'll stop. But the hits kept coming because ionizing radiation wasn't about to let humanity off the hook. Enter the infamous Demon Core incidents in the 1940s. The Demon Core was a sphere of plutonium being prepped for nuclear testing, and it proved that even inanimate objects can have murderous intent. In 1945, physicist Harry Daghlian accidentally dropped a tungsten carbide brick onto the core during an experiment. This caused a criticality accident, releasing a lethal burst of radiation. Harry received a fatal dose and died weeks later, making the Demon Core's kill count officially 1. Not to be outdone, the Demon Core struck again in 1946. This time, Louis Slotin was conducting a similarly risky experiment involving 2 half-spheres of beryllium and a plutonium core. He used a screwdriver, yes, a screwdriver, to keep the spheres apart while testing. The tool slipped, the spheres closed, and bam! A flash of blue light. Slowden heroically flipped the setup apart, saving others in the room, but not himself. He died 9 days later from acute radiation poisoning. At this point, the Demon Core was like, "Want to add more incidents in history, huh? Come on! I'm available all day! Come on! Come on!" And scientists stopped handling nuclear material like it was IKEA furniture. The incident became a grim reminder that ionizing radiation doesn't just break DNA. It breaks careers, bones, and anyone unlucky enough to get too close. But I'm a strong man. Those guys were nerds and girls who earn minimum wage. Radiation has got nothing on me. Well, even though your body may be sculpted like a Greek god and be healthier than an ox, but your DNA is something that you can't train like your muscles. Your DNA is like the blueprint for building a human being, an intricate and complicated instruction manual. The problem is, when radiation hits your DNA, it's like a toddler with a crayon scribbling all over it. Ionizing radiation can break the chemical bonds in your DNA strands, causing mutations. These mutations are not the cool kind, like growing extra arms like your favorite cartoon alien when you were a kid. These are the bad kinds, which can lead to all sorts of health issues, like a cold, a flu, or people who still believe that the world is flat even though time and time again they were proved wrong. Well, maybe in a better world, Charlie. Instead, it gives you cancer. Definitely cancer. Not all mutations are instant disasters, though. Some mutations get fixed, as your body has repair mechanisms in place to fix a lot of the damage. But the longer you're exposed to radiation, the more likely those fixes get sloppy, and eventually your body might say, "I quit! I'm not being paid enough to do this." We aren't getting paid in the first place. Oh yeah. So what happens if you don't work? Well, that'll probably lead to a halt in the body's entire process. A couple of genes broken. Oh, and cancer. Yep, definitely cancer. Oh, unpaid labor it is then. While radiation is mostly a DNA troublemaker, it also likes to target organs and tissues that are rapidly dividing. That's why certain organs are more vulnerable to radiation damage than others. Here's a quick rundown on what body parts radiation affects in a not-so-good way. First, we got the skin. If you ever spend too much time in the sun without sunscreen, you know how UV radiation can leave your skin red, crispy, and well done? Sunburns are the result of UV radiation causing damage to the skin cells. Over time, this can lead to premature aging, or even, you guessed it, skin cancer. Think of your skin as the frontline soldier in the radiation war. It tries its best to protect you, but too much UV exposure makes it wave the white flag. Next would be the hair follicles. If you've ever undergone radiation therapy for cancer treatment, you might have noticed your hair falling out. Why? Well, radiation targets cells that divide rapidly, like the ones in your hair follicles. This can temporarily or permanently affect your ability to grow that luscious mane of hair. So when you lose your hair due to radiation, just know that it's not you. It's the radiation's fault. Or genetics, because you might have a gene that makes you go bald. The bone marrow. Your bone marrow is like a little factory that churns out your blood cells. Radiation, however, doesn't care about your bone marrow's hustle. High doses of radiation can severely damage this factory, leading to a drop in red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. This can result in anemia, a weakened immune system, and difficulty clotting when you get a cut. Basically, you become a walking paper, fragile and prone to bruising. And last but not least, the lungs. If you're exposed to high doses of radiation over a long period of time, like nuclear accident fallout long, your lungs can and will take a hit. Chronic exposure to radiation, for example, can increase the risk of lung cancer. So while you believe you're inhaling fresh air, radiation might be silently creeping into your respiratory system. The scary part about radiation is that its effects aren't always immediately obvious. Sure, you might experience hair loss or the ability to remove your mask, but the long-term damage is what's really sneaky. Chronic exposure to low levels of radiation, like living near a nuclear power plant or frequently getting x-rays, can accumulate over time, which will inevitably lead to cancer rather serious conditions years down the road. It's like radiation's way of saying, I'll be back in a few decades. So, in conclusion, radiation is like everything. Too much good is bad, too much bad is bad. Rainy weather makes me sad. Subscribe. Number 1. The goose. A goose is a feathered honking security alarm with wings. These waterfowl belong to the Anatidae family, and while they may seem like quaint pastoral creatures, they have an unshakable reputation for being aggressive, territorial, and louder than your neighbor's failing car engine at 3 a.m. Geese are found all over the world, with species like the Canadian goose, the gray-legged goose, and the Chinese goose being the most well-known. They are herbivores, mostly munching on grass, seeds, and aquatic plants. But don't let their diet fool you. They will find anything, including people, cars, and sometimes their own reflections. Unlike dogs, geese don't need training to be aggressive. They're born with a built-in hatred for anything unfamiliar. When they sense an intruder, they honk loudly, hiss like a reptile with a vendetta, and if provoked, will chase down the intruder while flapping their powerful wings and attempting to bite. Their sharp beaks and surprisingly strong wings can leave bruises, and their persistence in a chase is downright terrifying. They also have keen eyesight and an acute sense of hearing, making them excellent early warning systems. Unlike guard dogs, they don't get bribed with treats. Geese simply do not negotiate with intruders. One of the most famous instances of geese being used as security animals happened in 390 BCE, when the Gauls attempted to invade Rome. The city's sacred geese camped at the temple of Juno, sensed the intruders, and started honking like they were auditioning for the world's most chaotic orchestra. This ruckus woke the Roman soldiers, who then managed to repel the attack. That's right, an entire civilization was saved because a bunch of birds refused to let anyone sneak past them. Beyond ancient Rome, geese have been used as security animals in modern times. The Chinese military once stationed geese at a base in Xinjiang, finding them more reliable than guard dogs for detecting nighttime intruders. Farmers worldwide also use them to protect livestock, as their aggression deters foxes, weasels, and even human trespassers. Geese can recognize faces and remember threats, meaning if you cross one, it may hold a grudge for life. Unlike your dog, which forgets why it walked into a room, geese will remember you and continue its vendetta whenever it sees you again. Number 2. The donkey. The donkey is a domesticated member of the horse family, often underestimated due to its reputation for being stubborn. However, that stubbornness is actually a strong survival instinct. Donkeys are naturally cautious, highly intelligent, and fiercely territorial, making them excellent security animals. They typically stand between 3 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder and can weigh up to 570 pounds. Unlike horses, donkeys have a strong fight response rather than a flight response, meaning that when faced with danger, they are more likely to stand their ground and attack rather than run away. Donkeys have an innate dislike for unfamiliar animals, particularly canines such as wolves, coyotes, and stray dogs. If a predator enters their territory, the donkey will charge, bite, and deliver a devastating kick capable of breaking bones. Their powerful hooves can crush the skull of an attacking predator, making them effective guards for livestock and farmsteads. Aside from their physical strength, donkeys also use loud, braying vocalizations to alert humans to potential threats. They are naturally territorial and will chase down anything they perceive as a danger. Unlike guard dogs, donkeys require no special training to defend their home. They do it instinctively. Many ranchers in Texas use donkeys to protect their livestock from coyotes. A well-documented example is the Lazy JV Ranch, which uses donkeys specifically as livestock guardians. The ranchers found that a single donkey in a pasture is enough to deter most predators, significantly reducing losses of sheep and goats. Donkeys have also been used in Australia and South America, where they are employed as natural deterrent against wild predators. Farmers and homesteaders worldwide rely on them because they are low maintenance and effective without needing human intervention. Number 3. The ostrich. The ostrich is the world's largest and fastest running bird, native to Africa, standing up to 9 feet tall and weighing as much as 150 kilograms or 330 pounds. This flightless bird evolved with a body built for speed in combat. With muscular legs, sharp claws, and an aggressive streak, ostriches are far from the gentle giants people assume them to be. Unlike most birds, ostriches have massive eyes, each about 2 inches in diameter, which give them exceptional eyesight, allowing them to spot threats from miles away. Their brains may be small, but when it comes to self-defense, they operate on pure instinct. Ostriches don't bark or hiss when threatened. They chase and attack. If an intruder enters their territory, an ostrich can sprint at 600 kilometers per hour or 37 miles per hour and deliver a forward kick strong enough to kill a lion. Their legs, which are designed for both running and fighting, pack enough force to break bones, and their 4-inch talons are sharp enough to cause serious injuries. They are naturally territorial and will aggressively defend their space from perceived threats, whether it's a predator, a human, or a shadow that looked at them the wrong way. This combination of speed, strength, and unpredictability makes them highly effective security animals. Ostriches don't need commands to act. They attack purely on instinct, making them impossible to bribe or distract. A notable example of ostriches being used for security is at Belur Farms in Karnataka, India. Faced with issues of trespassing and poaching, introduced ostriches as natural security animals. Their imposing size and aggressive nature deter unwanted visitors, often scaring them off before human security even needs to intervene. Ostriches have also been used in South African game reserves, where they help protect property and livestock from predators and poachers. Their speed and territorial aggression make them highly effective deterrents, proving that sometimes the best security system is a prehistoric-looking bird with a bad attitude. Number 4. The alligator. An alligator is a massive armored reptile belonging to the Alligatoridae family, primarily found in the southeastern United States and China. These prehistoric-looking creatures can grow up to 15 feet long and weigh over 1,000 pounds. Unlike crocodiles, alligators prefer freshwater environments and are generally less aggressive, unless provoked. Alligators are apex predators with powerful jaws capable of exerting over 2,000 psi of bite force, enough to crush bones instantly. They are ambush hunters, relying on their ability to stay perfectly still and strike with lightning speed when prey enters their territory. If you want a home security system that doesn't need electricity, an alligator-filled moat is about as effective as it gets. These reptiles deter trespassers simply by existing. Few criminals are willing to wade through gator-infested waters, making them a psychological deterrent as much as a physical one. If someone does attempt to cross into their territory, alligators can strike at speeds of up to 30 miles per hour in short bursts. Their death roll maneuver, where they violently spin to dismember prey, ensures that anything caught in their jaws don't escape. Unlike traditional security animals, alligators require no training. They just need a body of water and a reason to attack. One of the most infamous uses of alligators for security happened in 1980s Florida, where drug dealers kept guard gators to protect their stashes. One case involved a drug operation in Miami, where police found alligators being used to keep intruders away from illegal substances. Similarly, alligators have been used to guard homes and properties in Louisiana and Florida, where some residents keep them in their ponds or around their estates as living security barriers. While this is not exactly legal in all cases, it certainly makes an impression on would-be trespassers. Lastly, the snake. Snakes are legless reptiles found in almost every habitat on Earth, from deserts to jungles. They vary in size, from a few inches to over 30 feet long in the case of the reticulated python. While some are harmless, others possess venom potent enough to kill a human in minutes. There are 2 primary types of security snakes: constrictors like pythons and boas, which squeezes intruder into submission, and venomous snakes like cobras, vipers, and rattlesnakes, which rely on deadly bites. Snakes don't chase intruders like dogs, but they make trespassing a high-risk activity. Many cultures have used venomous snakes to deter thieves and intruders, knowing that the mere presence of a cobra or viper is enough to keep people away. Some property owners even deliberately introduce snakes into their land to control unwanted visitors. Constrictors such as pythons are known for ambushing and suffocating intruders, while venomous snakes can deliver lethal bites. Their natural ability to blend into the environment makes them unpredictable and highly effective at guarding territory. One of the most well-known cases of snakes being used as security is in India, where royal families and temples have historically kept cobras around treasure vaults. The Padmanabhaswamy Temple in Kerala, which houses billions in golds and jewels, is rumored to have used snakes as part of its security. Rural farmers in India and Southeast Asia have kept cobras and other venomous snakes in their granaries and homes to deter thieves and rodents alike. In some parts of Africa, pythons are even encouraged to live around settlements, as they help control both human and animal intruders. So which among these security animals do you want to be in your household? Leave a like and subscribe, and leave the animal of your choosing in the comments below. Stay stable. Sometimes I wonder what the thought process of our ancestors were. They probably were like, you know what? Why don't we put all these fish guts in a barrel, put some salt in them, put a lid on it, yeah, and wait for a year or so until the stench from the fish guts is so bad it makes Ethan's 2-month-old socks smell like lavender in comparison. You know what? That sounds oddly convincing. But how can we convince people to eat it? Just tell them it's fermented. Fermented? What does that mean? I don't know. Just tell them we used science. Fish sauce is a fermented condiment made from fish or krill that has been coated in salt and left to ferment. The origins of fish sauce trace back to ancient civilizations, particularly in China, Greece, and Rome, where it was a staple ingredient. The Romans called their version garum, a highly prized sauce made by fermenting fish guts, blood, and other remnants. Large vats were filled with these waste products, mixed with salt, and left to decompose under the sun. Over time, bacteria broke down the proteins, releasing amino acids and umami-rich liquid. After months, the top layer was skimmed off, filtered, and used as a seasoning. This process remains largely unchanged in modern Southeast Asian fish sauce production. In Thailand, Vietnam, and in the Philippines, entire fish are layered in barrels with salt. Enzymes from the guts digest the flesh, producing liquid. The first extraction yields the highest quality, while later batches are diluted. Traditional methods can take over a year. Industrial production speeds this up by using heat and chemical accelerants. The pungent aroma comes from compounds like ammonia and hydrogen sulfide. Though some modern fish sauces use whole fish, many still rely on discarded parts, making it a product of waste recycling. In Roman times, garum factories were located near coastlines due to the intense smell. Today, similar facilities exist across Asia. Some regions prefer a sweeter, lighter sauce, while others favor a darker, stronger version. It remains vital in countless dishes, from Vietnamese pho to Thai pad Thai. Even Western chefs have embraced it for its rich umami. Despite being derived from fish waste, its value has persisted for millennia. Fermentation not only enhances flavor, but also preserves nutrients. The final product contains protein, minerals, and antioxidants. While some cultures view it as a necessity, others consider it as an acquired taste. Speaking of acquired taste, that'll make it into some sick coffee, man. What? I didn't say nothing. Black Ivory coffee is one of the rarest and most expensive coffees in the world, produced using a unique process involving elephants. Originating in Thailand, this coffee is made by feeding Thai Arabica coffee cherries to elephants, allowing digestion to alter the beans inside the elephant's stomach. Enzymes break down proteins, reducing bitterness. This natural fermentation enhances smoothness and imparts a unique flavor. After digestion, the beans are excreted and collected by caretakers. They are then washed, sun-dried, and processed for roasting. The entire method is time-consuming, requiring approximately 33 kilograms of raw cherries to produce just 1 kilogram of finished coffee. The origins of Black Ivory coffee trace back to research into animal-assisted fermentation. Similar techniques have been observed in civet coffee, but elephant digestion offers a distinct advantage. Elephants are herbivores, consuming a variety of plants, which influence the flavor profile. The beans undergo a longer digestion period, further altering their chemical composition. The resulting coffee is known for its smooth, earthy taste, with chocolate and floral notes. Unlike traditional coffee processing, this method reduces acidity, making it more palatable for those sensitive to bitterness. Due to the rarity of the process, Black Ivory coffee is produced in limited quantities, often sold at luxury prices. The ethical aspect is also emphasized as elephants are cared for by conservation programs. Unlike forced civet coffee, elephants are not confined and freely consume the cherries. Farmers and caretakers benefit from sustainable tourism and ethical sourcing. The fermentation process mimics traditional aging techniques, breaking down plant matter and enhancing depth of flavor. The final product is carefully sorted, roasted, and packaged for sale. Because of the extensive labor and time required, it remains one of the most exclusive coffees available. Its distinct profile and meticulous craftsmanship have made it highly sought after. That would make for some pretty good coffee. I think you need to see a doctor. Kopi Luwak is one of the most expensive and controversial coffees in the world, originating from Indonesia. It is produced using Asian palm civets, small nocturnal mammals that consume ripe coffee cherries. The beans pass through the animal's digestive system, undergoing fermentation inside the stomach. Enzymes break down proteins, reducing bitterness and altering the flavor profile. After digestion, the beans are excreted and collected from feces. They are then washed, dried, and roasted. The process is believed to enhance smoothness and introduce unique earthy caramel-like notes. Historically, Kopi Luwak was discovered during Dutch colonial rule in Indonesia. Local farmers were forbidden from using coffee from plantations, but noticed that civets ate the best cherries. They began collecting and processing the beans found in civet droppings. Over time, this method gained recognition, and Kopi Luwak became a sought-after delicacy. Traditionally, wild civets forage freely, selecting the ripest cherries. This natural selection contributed to the coffee's quality. However, increased demands led to mass production, with many civets now kept in captivity. Caged civets are often fed an unnatural diet and deprived of their natural behaviors. This affects the quality of the coffee and raises ethical concerns. Some producers claim to use only wild-sourced beans, but verifying authenticity is difficult. The process itself mimics other fermentation methods where digestive acids alter the bean's chemical composition. While wild Kopi Luwak is considered superior, verifying sources remains a challenge for consumers seeking authentic and ethical products. Since we're on the topic of ethical, do you like maggots on your cheese? What the fuck? No? Well, tough luck, because what you're eating is basically cheese filled with worm vomit and worm poop. Casu Marzu is a traditional Sardinian cheese infamous for its unique fermentation process, which involves live insect larvae. The name translates to rotten cheese in Sardinian, referring to its advanced decomposition. Made from sheep's milk, the cheese starts as pecorino sardo, a firm cheese left to age. To create Casu Marzu, cheesemakers intentionally introduce the larvae of the cheese fly, which accelerate the fermentation process. The larvae digest the fats, breaking down the cheese's texture into a soft, almost liquid consistency. This transformation results in a strong, pungent flavor, often described as intense and spicy. The cheese is traditionally eaten while the larvae are still alive, as dead larvae indicate spoilage. Some diners prefer to remove the larvae, while others consume them along with the cheese. When disturbed, the larvae can jump several inches, leading some people to wear protective eyewear. Casu Marzu has been part of Sardinian culture for centuries, historically made by shepherds as a way to extend the life of their cheese. However, due to health concerns, not surprising, it is officially banned by the European Union. Despite this, Casu Marzu continues to be produced illegally and consumed within Sardinian communities. Now, in some rare cases, we find discoveries in our world that sort of happen a bit later than expected. Like imagine the first guys to see this on the coast. This might be a mermaid scale. No, this probably might be one of those proof that Atlantis is real. Excuse me, humans. Do you have any toilet paper around? Did that whale just fucking talk? Ambergris is a waxy substance produced in the intestines of sperm whales. This material forms when a whale's digestive system produces a solid, fatty substance in response to indigestible food, such as squid beaks. Over time, it hardens and becomes buoyant, floating in the ocean until it eventually washes ashore, where it is collected. Ambergris can vary in color from light gray to dark brown and has a distinctive musky odor. Historically, ambergris was used in culinary applications such as flavoring sweets, beverages, and perfumes. It was considered a luxury item, often consumed by royalty and elites. In Europe, during the 17th and 18th centuries, ambergris was added to the liquors like brandy and used in making pastries. It was believed to have aphrodisiac properties and was highly prized. Ambergris was also thought to have medicinal qualities, such as aiding digestion and treating ailments. The process of harvesting ambergris is labor-intensive, as it must be carefully collected from beaches or retrieved from the ocean. Once collected, it undergoes a purification process where it is cleaned and aged. The aging process enhances its fragrance, making it more suitable for use in perfumes and flavoring. While ambergris is still used in perfume production, its use in food has declined, largely due to ethical concerns regarding real conservation and the rarity of the substance. In modern times, synthetic substitutes are often used in place of real ambergris. Despite its controversial origins, ambergris remains a fascinating example of how animal byproducts can become highly sought after luxury goods. Now that you know what products these animal wastes make, would you like to try them next? Leave a comment down below and see you in the next one. Stay stable. Hmm, I think I'll have this steak. Very good, sir. Well done. Thank you. Alright, you ferny maniacs, let me introduce you to the Middle Mist's red camellia, a flower so rare it makes finding a matching sock in your laundry seem like a party game made by Santa Claus. This botanical beauty hails from the camellia family, a group of flowers that's basically the Kardashians of the plant world, flashy, attention-grabbing, and requiring way too much care needed to survive. But unlike your garden variety camellias, the Middle Mist's Red is playing a hardcore game of hide and seek. Right now, there are only two known specimens of this flower in the entire world. That's right, two. As in fewer Middle Mist's Red exist than your chance at winning at the slot machine. Good luck. So what does this elusive flower's rare characteristics look like? Well, imagine the love child of a rose and a peony, but with a better fashion sense. It's bright pink, despite its name insisting it's red, which will chalk up to the 19th century color blindness. It also has dense, velvety petals that spiral together in a way that screams, "I'm too pretty for this low-quality YouTube video." What were you saying? Leave a like and subscribe, guys, and climate change is real. Always recycle and vegetarians are evil. One of these two plants resides in the Chiswick House and Gardens in London, where it's kept under conditions so controlled that it probably has a more detailed skincare routine than you do. The other is chilling somewhere in New Zealand, because apparently, even flowers think that living in one of the most isolated countries is much better than being in the mainstream media. And that's it. Two plants, a whole world apart, desperately holding on to their species like the last two brain cells during an all-nighter before finals. So how did this flower become rarer than meat when it's in the swimming pool? Well, let's take a trip down memory lane, all the way back to the early 19th century. This story starts with John Middlemist, a British nursery owner and part-time importer. He brought the plant from China to the UK in 1804. Back then, people were obsessed with exotic plants. If it came from far away and didn't immediately kill you, then you better believe people will salivate at just the thought of having one. Middlemist probably thought, "Wow, jolly, this flower is gorgeous, and totally not doomed to become a living relic," and promptly named it after himself because modesty was not a thing in the 1800s. The Middlemist Red quickly fell out of fashion though. Why? Because camellias in general are finicky divas. They need just the right balance of water, sunlight, and soil pH. Get it wrong, and they'll wither faster than the amount of people who go to the gym after New Year's. Combine that with the fact that plant keeping trends shifted over time, and suddenly, this flower was yesterday's news. It also didn't help that no one thought to, preserve it. People were too busy obsessing over tulips or ferns or whatever the 19th century version of hip and happening selection of flower was. Meanwhile, back in China, where the flower originally came from, the Middle Mist red was already on its way out. Industrialization and urbanization destroyed much of its natural habitat. By the time anyone noticed, the plant was gone from the wild, leaving behind only a handful of specimens in private collections. Fast forward to the present day, and the Middle Mist red became the botanical equivalent of a loving and caring single father. There's so few of them that seeing one in your lifetime is considered a miracle. Botanists and horticulturists have tried to propagate it, but it's not as simple as sticking a seed in the ground and praying to the almighty plant god for the best. The flower doesn't produce seeds reliably, which means growing more of them requires cloning, a process that's about as straightforward as learning advanced algebra while juggling flaming swords. There's also the issue of its environment. Remember how I said it's a diva? The Middle Mist red has even more specific demands. It needs a mild climate, well draining soil, and a gardener willing to sacrifice their social life. That's a tall order, especially when the plant is already rare and scientists are working with limited genetic material. It's like trying to assemble a puzzle with two pieces, but you have to find the rest in the Bermuda Triangle. But here's the silver lining. The rarity of the Middle Mist thread has made people realize the importance of preserving plants and their habitats. Conservationists are now going above and beyond to ensure this flower doesn't disappear entirely. So while the Middle Mist red may be rare, it's also a symbol of how far we're willing to go to save even the most finicky members of the plant kingdom. And there you have it, the story of the world's rarest flower. It's beautiful, mysterious, and just a little bit extra. Honestly, if it weren't a plant, it would probably have its own reality show. So, buddies, other than that, stay hydrated. Let's talk about a plant so deadly it was used to repel werewolves, at least historically speaking. Wolfsbane, also known as aconitum, or if you're feeling correct, monkshood, is basically nature's way of saying if it has a name that sounds like it can kill a wolf, that's probably a good sign not to eat it. It's got purple flowers, pointy hoods, and a body count that would make a 16th century king jealous. So, buckle up as we dive into the botanical equivalent of a poison dipped shuriken. So, what even is wolfsbane? Wolfsbane is part of the Ranunculaceae family. But just to be sure, let's call it the buttercup family. Which sounds innocent enough, right? Well, that's where you're wrong. That's like finding out your childhood teddy bear has tested positive for syphilis. This plant is native to mountainous regions in Europe and Asia, thriving in damp meadows and shady areas, like Detroit. Its Latin name aconitum roughly translates to without struggle, which is ironic because if you mess with this thing, your body will struggle a lot. Wolfsbane got a reputation that spans centuries, from being a witch's go-to potion ingredient to being the main sign by wolf god Senpai Oni-sama for wolves to reconsider its life choices. Here's where it gets cool and a little spooky. Back in the day, farmers had a real problem with wolves. Wolves would show up, eat their livestock, and escape before they could do anything. So humans being humans, they thought, why not train ourselves to be capable enough to fight off wolves? Make an elaborate security system to lessen casualties, and use grazing lands that have lesser chances of having wolves in them. How about we use poison? But listen, buddy, I got circumcised 3 hours earlier than everyone in this village. So if anyone has authority here, that'll be me. They lace meat with wolfsbane because, fun fact, wolfsbane contains neurotoxin so potent it makes cyanide look like an over-the-counter sex-enhancing drug. Now here's where things get even wilder. Some folklore says wolfsbane wasn't just used to kill wolves. It was also believed to ward off werewolves. Yeah, apparently some guy named Hans in 15th century Bavaria looked at the full moon and said, "Yep, better rub some plant juice in my doors, just in case a werewolf would show up." Now, what makes it so deadly? Wolfsbane contains a cocktail of alkaloids, the main one being aconitine, which if goes near anywhere near your bloodstream mean, congratulations, you've been promoted. Good luck. Did you know? Living, here's what aconitine does. First, you'll feel a little tingly. Then your fingers go numb. And before you know it, your body is auditioning for The Walking Dead. Then aconitine messes with your ion channels, which are like the bouncers of your cells. It tells your heart to beat out of rhythm until it just gives up entirely, like trying to dance disco during a heart attack while someone throws bricks at you. That's your heart of wolfsbane. It's so toxic that even handling the plant without gloves can be dangerous. One minute you're admiring its purple petals, and the next, you're doing an impression of a fish out of water. Now, let's talk about the two M's, murder and medicine. People have been using wolfsbane to off each other for centuries. Ancient Greeks allegedly used it to poison enemy water supplies because, diplomacy is overrated. In Rome, Emperor Claudius may or may not have been poisoned with wolfsbane by his wife Agrippina, which up until now is still up for debate, but seeing as it's effective in offing emperors, I think that's a good idea how lethal this plant is. Oh, and let's not forget the ninjas of feudal Japan. These guys would coat their weapons with wolfsbane extract, so not only would you die from the stab wound, but also from the slow, agonizing nerve poisoning. On the flip side, some cultures used wolfsbane in medicine, because who doesn't love a little fix you or kill you vibe in their healthcare? Traditional Chinese medicine sometimes employed tiny doses of wolfsbane to treat pain and inflammation, but in all honesty, it's more effective as a killing concoction rather than for medicines. While wolfsbane is occasionally studied for its potential applications in very controlled doses, most medical professionals avoid it like the plague. Why? Because the line between therapeutic and lethal is so thin it might as well not exist. Even when used in traditional medicine, wolfsbane is heavily processed to reduce its toxicity, and even then it's considered a last resort. So how do you spot it in the wild? You're on a hike, frolicking in the meadows, and you see a plant with tall spikes of purple flowers. Well, you just found a wolfsbane. Its flowers have a distinctive hood-like shape, which is why it's also called monk's hood. But don't let the name fool you. This thing is more likely to send you to heaven than to absolve your sins. The plant can grow up to 5 feet tall, which means it's basically the Tom Cruise of the toxic flower world. Small, but capable of ruining lives. Beyond its deadly reputation, wolfsbane plays a critical role in the ecosystems where it thrives. As a native plant in mountainous regions of Europe and Asia, it provides nectars for pollinators like bees and butterflies. Surprisingly, some insects such as specialized bumblebee species have evolved to tolerate its toxicity and even rely on it as a food source. However, wolfsbane isn't just a pretty flower helping pollinators. It also has a built-in defense system. Its extreme toxicity keeps herbivores at bay, ensuring it doesn't get casually nibbled by passing deer or people who can't stop shouting that they're vegetarians. Now, if you're the type of person who loves living dangerously, you might be thinking, hey, I should totally plant wolfsbane in my garden. It's pretty, and it keeps werewolves away. But let me stop you right there, my mentally challenged friend, because wolfsbane is not your average gardening flower choice. In fact, growing it comes with more red flags than a forgotten minefield in Vietnam, because wolfsbane isn't just a danger to you, it's a liability to everyone around you. That curious neighbor kid who can't resist touching stuff? The overly enthusiastic dog that eats everything? One accidental encounter with wolfsbane, and suddenly you're writing apology cards to grieving families. Handling it safely requires gloves, protective clothing, and a kind of caution usually reserved for disarming bombs. Even tiny amounts of the toxin can seep through cuts or scratches on your skin. So unless your dream garden aesthetic is death trap check, it's probably best to leave wolfsbane to professionals. Then there's the legal side of things. Some places regulate or outright ban the cultivation of wolfsbane due to its toxicity. After all, it's not just a plant. It's basically a murder weapon that happens to be rooted in the ground. So before you start digging holes in your backyard, check your local laws, because nothing says awkward like explaining to the cops why there's a dead child and a dead dog in your backyard. So there you have it, wolfsbane. It's beautiful, deadly, and the perfect metaphor for bad decisions. If you ever come across it in the wild, admire it from a distance, and remember that Mother Nature is just as capable of creating reasons to horrifyingly kill you as she sunsets. And remember, buddy, don't plant this if you have neighbors who have kids and dogs, and apply it to your door if you ever feel like there's a werewolf problem in your area. Other than that, stay classy. Hey buddy, did you ever try to roll a piece of paper in middle school, light it up like a blunt, inhale the smoke from the paper, then go into seizure due to an allergic reaction? No? Well, here's a plant that can do far worse. Introducing the Jimsonweed, or the more badass name, Devil's Trumpet. Plant so toxic it makes smoking look like a good alternative to breathing. Let's start with what it looks like. Jimsonweed is one of those plants that says, "Hey, I'm totally harmless. Look at my cute little flowers." But in reality, it's basically the botanical equivalent of a clown holding a chainsaw. This thing grows all over the place, in fields, along roadsides, even in your neighbor's yard. And don't bother asking why they haven't gotten rid of it, because even they don't know it's there. The name Jimsonweed comes from Jamestown weed because back in 1676, some British soldiers found it growing near Jamestown, Virginia. And because these geniuses didn't have Google back then, they thought, "Hey bruv, let's toss this in the stew, innit?" What followed was a week and a half of absolute chaos. Report says that the soldiers were playing naked, acting silly, and eating everything in sight. So basically, imagine a kid's birthday party, but instead of cake, everyone's munching on mushrooms, and instead of pin the tail on the donkey, they're having an existential crisis with the lawn gnome. Fast forward a few centuries, and people are still messing around with this stuff. Why? Because humans have the collective survival instinct of a lemming on a cliff. Some folks actually use Jimsonweed as a recreational drug, which is like saying, "Oh, regular drugs aren't risky enough. Let's try the plant that nearly broke colonial America." Here's the science bit. Jimsonweed is packed with tropane alkaloids like atropine, scopolamine, and hyoscyamine. These aren't just fancy words. They're the chemicals responsible for the plant's toxic effects. What effects, you ask? Oh, just the greatest hits. Dry mouth so bad you feel like you swallowed a bucket of sand, blurred vision that makes you think your eyeballs are buffering, and hallucinations vivid enough to make you question if you even exist. And don't think they're just seeing cool, trippy stuff either. Nope. People report hallucinations so horrifying they'd make Stephen King call his therapist. One guy claimed he saw spiders crawling out of his skin. Another thought his fridge was trying to attack him. Yeah, fun times. Oh, and let's not forget the part where it can straight up kill you. Eat too much of his stuff and it can cause seizures, paralysis, or just flat out stop your heart. It's like Russian roulette, except all the chambers are loaded and the gun is yelling, "Do it." And speaking of poor choices, throughout history, people have used Jimsonweed in all sorts of weird ways. Indigenous groups sometimes used it in tiny, carefully measured doses for spiritual rituals, which makes sense. If you're gonna talk to the spirit world, you might as well use the plant that makes you think you're already halfway there. But fast forward to modern times and you've got teenagers trying to use it to get high. Spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. Most of the time it's less, "Woo, I'm having fun," and more, "Help, I'm having a conversation with my spleen." Even if you're smart enough not to eat it, Jimsonweed still finds a way to ruin your day. Touching it can irritate your skin. And if you're allergic to its pollen, say hello to the kind of sneezing fits that'll make you wish you didn't have lungs. But here's the kicker. People still grow it on purpose. Apparently, it's used in some traditional medicines, and in small doses, the chemicals can treat things like asthma or motion sickness, which is kind of like saying, "Sure, this plant is trying to kill me, but maybe it can also help my sinuses." So, how do you avoid this plant I just explained can kill you in a couple of steps? Simple. If you see something that looks like Jimsonweed, big leaves, white trumpet shaped flowers, spiky seed pods, just walk the other way. Treat it like a skunk that's trying to convince you that the entire world is shaped like a decagon, or your ex of 4 years trying to contact you after you caught her cheating with your neighbor. In conclusion, Jimsonweed is nature's way of reminding us that not all plants are cute little vegans waiting to be tossed in a salad. Sometimes they're psychopathic green booby traps waiting for the next victim to touch them. And that's Jimsonweed, a plant so toxic, it makes you appreciate how lucky you are to have normal weeds in your backyard. And remember, don't get high with your lawn gnome, don't trust colonial British soldiers, and as always, stay classy. Hello, comrade. I'm about to introduce you to a tree that can be used as an inspiration for the title of an anime. I got isekai'd as a tree, but I can walk. Give me credit for that, I deserve some credit. Anywho, meet Socratea ixoriza, or as people like to call it, the walking palm tree. And no, I'm not talking about some weird tree that does the moonwalk or anything. This tree literally moves. Yeah, that's right. It just doesn't sit like a basic tree. What makes its name is that it gets up, stretches its roots, and walks to a new spot. This tree is basically the plant equivalent of what would happen to trees if they decide to walk, or something like that. Get it? Walking. Anyways, let's break it down. The walking palm tree, Socratea ixoriza, is a type of palm that grows in the tropical rainforests of Central and South America. And while most palms are perfectly content just chilling in one spot, this particular palm tree decided to be cooler than the other trees in the vicinity. If you ever watched the scene in Lord of the Rings where the hobbits convinced the trees to fight the orcs, well, this is nothing like that. So, how does it do this, you ask? Well, it grows roots out of its trunk. Not just any roots. Roots that stretch out in every direction to support the movement of the tree. And when the old roots are no longer useful, they just die off. Like an old phone charger you're too lazy to throw away. So, little by little, over the course of several years, the tree moves to a new location. It's like it's slowly doing the moonwalk across the rainforest, but with roots. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, cool, this tree can walk, but why would it need to? Well, Mr. Smart Person that can't wait to finish the video to ask questions, let me tell you something. Why don't you shut up? The walking palm tree isn't trying to go around the world or anything. Actually, like any Gen Zers like me, it's just trying to survive. You see, trees need sunlight. Plants are basically obsessed with the stuff. Photosynthesis is their whole deal. But, and here's the kicker, in the rainforest, things get crowded. If you ever been to a rainforest or seen one in a nature documentary, you know the canopy is so dense that not even a ray of sunlight can get through. So this palm tree, being the resourceful creation of God as it is, decided that if it wasn't going to get enough sunlight from its current position, it'd just move. The tree's roots start growing in one direction, and then as the tree slowly but surely moves, it finds itself in a new, sunnier spot. It's kind of like when you're trying to catch a good signal on your Wi-Fi by walking to the top of the mountains, except the walking palm does this for years. You heard it, years. But it's not like this tree setting any speed records. In fact, this tree can move a few meters over the course of its lifetime, which sounds pretty underwhelming, until you realize that's the distance between that double chin of yours and your fridge when you're too lazy to get up, but then you remember there's pizza. So how did it get the name walking palm? Well, as obvious as it is, one of the theories correlated to the name was the fact that the roots slowly move like human limbs over the course of its lifetime. If you can do a quick fact check in Google, you would notice that what I said was a lie. Don't believe what everyone on YouTube says. This is an example. Anyways, if you're expecting a sophisticated reason, how about aligning the words walking and tree for once? Let's see how many times you can guess why it was named this way. But jokes aside, instead of racking your big brains about this, I'm here to tell you that everything that I said earlier from this video is not supported by any scientific evidence, because up until now, everything that the walking palm tree claims itself to be is mostly a myth or a passed down story by locals, and scientists are still disputing whether or not this claim that the tree actually walks is true. So remember friends, do a bit of research, then be diligent when it comes to it. Other than that, stay classy.